Well, welcome back from a Blanket Fort recording studio in a one-bedroom apartment in North Hollywood. This is People Pleaser. I'm Austin Archer, and today on the show, I'd like to talk about bad faith framing and reactionary defensiveness. Okay, this is something I feel like in online discourse you hear all the time. You see this in the comment sections all the time. Not necessarily reactionary defensiveness. I'm not sure that comment sections on the internet are full of people saying, oh God, there's so much reactionary defensiveness in here. You might see those terms separately. You might see people calling people reactionaries and saying that they practice reactionary politics. And you might see more commonly people accusing people of getting defensive in a comment section or, in a discourse where they feel attacked or under a microscope. But what you'll definitely see a lot of is people saying, you're not engaging in good faith. That's a bad faith question. That's a bad faith argument. And in all the years that I've been doing this, I'm not sure. I feel like these concepts should be simple enough to understand, but I'm not sure that people actually, kind of like the same way that we throw around words like communism and Marxism and socialism without actually having a real working knowledge of what they are. I think these are similar. I think that terms like bad faith and straw man and even getting into like logical fallacies can be very easily misunderstood by a lot of people where they think like, oh, it's an ad hominem fallacy, which just means that if you ever say anything derogatory about the person you're arguing against, you automatically lose the argument. And it's like, that's not necessarily actually how an ad hominem argument works. If I'm arguing with a person who says that the earth is flat and I say, no, the earth is an oblate spheroid, you rock brain, the fact that I called them a rock brain doesn't make me wrong. I don't just lose the argument because I was meaner about it. I'm still right, but like the fallacious part of it can be if you are replacing your argument with personal attacks. If instead of a counter argument and a solid refutation, all you have left is personal attacks, that's when it's fallacious. And I think we need to get into when is a thing bad faith? What does bad faith look like? What does it actually mean? So we're going to start off by just going through this video that I made for TikTok. We're just going to watch it. A lot of the people here in the TikTok digital studio audience probably have already seen this video, but we're going to kind of break it down, like watch it and pause it and talk about it a little bit more. But, maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. I sort of read this conservative woman that I saw the other day for filth, as I'm prone to do from time to time, and let's take a look at it.
What about the groceries? Has the groceries went down yet? I don't give a fuck about the groceries.
Oh, baby girl, we know that. We know that. We know you don't give a fuck about groceries. The reason why we keep bringing groceries up is because that's what you said when we asked you, how are you going to vote for this man again? How are you going to vote for this man who is a 34-time convicted felon, who has been held liable for sexual assault in court? This man whose first presidential term was a colossal disaster in every conceivable way. How are you going to vote for him again? And what you said is, I know all of those things are true about him, but I gotta get my hands on some of them cheap groceries. I gotta get cheaper eggs. I gotta get cheaper slices of cheese. That's what you said. And we knew you were full of shit when you said that. We knew you were lying. And the reason why we keep bringing it up is to rub your face in that lie. So when you say you don't give a fuck about the groceries, we know that. We know your vote was never actually about the groceries. It was always about the fact that he is bigoted against the same people you are bigoted against. I mean, look at your hairstyle. It's 2025 and you're walking around with a whole ass minstrel show on your head, probably saying stuff like Rastaman and Peace Be to Journey. And I bet if you did a 23andMe, you'd be like 60% German, 40% Irish Catholic, and 100% as white as the unpasteurized milk that you no doubt drink for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single goddamn day. But I gotta be honest, that's one of my favorite reads I've ever done. I've been doing this full time for 5 years, and that right there, I'm so proud of that. I'm not even gonna be humble about it. I'm so proud of everything from whole ass minstrel show on your head all the way through to the milk line, to the unpasteurized milk you no doubt drink for breakfast, morning, lunch, and dinner every goddamn day. Boy, what a line. I came up with that on the toilet. I was sitting on the toilet and I was like, what is she as white as? I was like 60% German, 40% Irish Catholic. That's fine. But what is she as white as? And I almost said as white as my untanned ass cheeks. And I was like, that's not that great. That's kind of, I don't know, like that's maybe funny. But then when I realized like, oh yeah, the milk thing, the unpasteurized raw milk that they all love to drink. That's what it is. And boy, I feel so good about that. And I also think that like saying a white person who has dreadlocks has a whole ass minstrel show on their head is kind of great. It's kind of great. Really proud of myself on that one. Let's keep going.
Sure didn't give a fuck about the groceries the last 4 years, or the gas prices, or the fact that we were sending millions to other countries. My bad, trillions. The millions went to the immigrants that crossed the border illegally.
Yeah, racism. You see, there it is. You just don't like brown people. Really quick here, like right off the bat, we're into the bad faith stuff. When she says you guys didn't care about the cost of things for the last 4 years, like this is just a bad faith framing. First of all, we were never the ones who were going around being like, the economy's terrible, Biden's ruining the economy. But we also weren't being like, oh, gas prices are great and the prices of groceries are great. We were trying to explain to conservatives for the last 4 years that Biden's economic policy was an attempt to recover from the disaster of the Trump era, and also, a recovery from the global pandemic that happened to the entire world. So we were trying to explain to Trump supporters from day one of the Biden administration that Biden didn't just become president and then make gas prices more expensive. That's not how economics work. When he was sworn in as president in January of 2021, the gas prices were already up. They were already responding to what was happening in the global market because of the global pandemic. And a lot of the inflation that happened during the first few years of the Biden administration was as a direct result of economic policies from the Trump administration. It's not uncommon for an incoming administration to have to deal with the ramifications of their predecessor, and it takes a while. We were the ones saying, just for the record, like that no president can come in and just change the economy unilaterally in one day, that it takes some time, that you have to deal with the consequences of the previous president first. That was our position. So saying like, you guys didn't care about the prices, it's like, well, no, you're just framing it poorly. Like we did care about it, but we were just trying to explain to you that your grievance with the prices wasn't as well thought out or well reasoned as ours was. Let's keep going. Sorry. Yeah, racism. You see, there it is. You just don't like brown people. It's all right. You can just say that. Yeah, and that is what it really is. She's just like at the crux of her bad faith framing when she's like, you guys didn't care about all the money we were sending to other people, when what really comes out, what's true, is she's just like, I didn't like that we were giving money to immigrants, and particularly like a specific kind of immigrant. Like we know which kind of immigrants she's talking about. And that's what she doesn't like.
Our homeless and our vets stayed on the streets.
Oh, conservatives are trying to help out homeless people and vets? That's what you think? You voted for Donald Trump because you think the Trump administration is going to show up for the unhoused and the veteran population? This talking point is every bit as disingenuous as you saying it was about groceries. Like, you don't care about unhoused people. You don't care about vets. You're just racist. You're just a bigot. Just keep it simple. Keep it honest.
And now all you have is the groceries. Everybody and their moms knows you can't fix the economy in one day.
Everybody and their moms knows that. Everybody and their moms knows that you can't fix the economy in one day. You might want to tell that to the guy you voted for, because while he was campaigning, he said this.
So when I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
And, not only should you tell that to Trump, you should tell that to you from 4 years ago. like, not only should you inform Trump that, everybody knows you can't just fix the economy in one day, you should tell you that. Because again, that was your actual position. You were the people who, when Biden was sworn in on day one, you were putting stickers at the gas pumps going, yeah, I did that. Brandon, let's go, Brandon. You were the people who we were having to tell, like, that's not how the economy works. The president just doesn't get sworn in and he just calls all of the corporations and goes, now that I'm here, hike the prices up. We were trying to explain that to you. So, maybe just get in a time machine and tell yourself from the past these things. Why did he say he was going to immediately fix grocery prices on day one? By the way, that's a campaign promise that he walked back like a week after he won the election. He didn't even wait to the inauguration to be like, actually, I can't fix grocery prices. Just immediately after you guys voted for him, he was like, yeah, I was lying about that.
Just goes to show how little you guys have on him. Find one thing that you don't like and you just run with it forever.
I say this to conservative people all the time. The fact that you cannot accurately represent the foundation of your opposition's position, the fact that you have to frame everything in bad faith to advocate for your own position, the fact that you have to say, like, you guys only have one thing. You find one thing you don't like about him, and that's all you've got. You've only got this one thing. And I know that's not true. Everybody knows that's not true. Just like we knew you were lying when you said you were voting for him because of groceries, we know you're lying. I want to say something here because I don't really complete that thought in the video, and it's the one part of the video that I'm like, damn, I didn't really complete the thought. I think that the thought sort of completes itself if you're a thoughtful person and a critical thinker, but I do want to just linguistically close the loop of the thought because I open it up linguistically by saying the fact that you are incapable of accurately representing your opposition's argument, the fact that you have to frame everything in bad faith, and then I don't finish the thought by saying like means yada, 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 yada. I just go on to being like, we obviously have more than one grievance, and then I list all of the grievances. But what it means, to finish the thought, the fact that conservatives en masse are incapable of accurately representing their opposition's arguments, the fact that they are incapable of framing the disagreements that we have in good faith, shows that they don't actually have a foundational trust in their own position. They don't actually believe in the strength of their arguments. Whether that's conscious or unconscious, it doesn't really matter. It's a distinction without a difference, honestly. Like, if it's conscious, it just makes you more of like an intentional, overt liar. But if it's unconscious, you're still lying. You're still doing something where on some subconscious level, your position is not strong enough to be advocated for in good faith. So the only way you can advocate for your position is to lie about your opposition's position, to pretend like they have a different position than they actually have, a weaker position than they actually have. So that kind of closes the loop of that thought. And now let's hear the list that this Austin put together for the video. I know that we've got a list 100 miles long of grievances. How far back do I need to go? Do I need to go back to him putting an ad in the New York Times saying we should execute a bunch of black teenagers for a crime they wound up being completely innocent of? Do I need to go back to when he told his real estate companies not to rent to black people? Or should we just start at like the beginning of Trump's political career? When he was openly mocking disabled reporters, when he said that he could kill someone on Fifth Avenue and you people are so gullible you would vote for him anyway. When audio was leaked of him saying that when you're a big famous guy, you can do whatever you want to women. You can grab them by the vagina and that's totally cool because you're rich and famous. When he called Africa a continent full of shithole countries. When he openly said on the debate stage against Hillary Clinton that if he ever lost an election, he would just claim the election was rigged and he would just never accept defeat no matter what. And then when he lost in 2020, he did just that. And you guys still were like, yeah, I think he's telling the truth. I think this is legitimate. Even though he said that this is the lie he would tell if he ever lost, I think that this is real. His disastrous mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic, his disastrous tax policies that only favor the extremely wealthy and totally screw over the lower classes, i.e. you. All right, so, pretty decent list from TikTok, Austin. I think all I needed to do was demonstrate that there are more than one reason to hate Donald Trump. What's funny is even if we took her bad faith framing at face value and said that we do only have one grievance, she's wrong about the one. Like the fact that like the one thing she thinks we have, she goes, it really shows that you guys don't have anything on him. It shows how little you have on him, that there's only one thing that you can ever talk about. And the one thing she's talking about is grocery prices. And that's not even one of our things. We're like, oh no, we don't actually give a shit that he's not fixing grocery prices. You are the ones who said that that's why you were voting for him. And you were lying about that, but like, you're the ones who said you cared about the price of eggs so much that you would let Nazis be in the White House. We didn't say that. That's not even like, that doesn't crack like the top 200 reasons on our list. That's not even like you think you're saying that that's our one reason. And it's like, that's nowhere near the top of the list. But yeah, pretty decent collection of things there. TikToks obviously have to be truncated and small. This is like a 5-minute long video, which is like an eternity in TikTok land. And I tried to make the list extensive, but also truncated. But obviously the list is like so much longer than that. And since we're doing the podcast, and since the podcast is long form, I figured why not just list off several more things, you know, and then maybe the TikTok Digital Studio audience can help me out if I'm leaving anything off the list. So let's just do a few more things. Okay, how about the fact that when he lost the election in 2020, he led an insurrection to try to overthrow the government? How about that? That he fomented an insurrection, that he's a traitor who tried to overthrow American democracy, that was like one of the scariest things that a former president has ever done in the modern political era. How about the fact that he started the Kenya birther conspiracy, that when Barack Obama was running for president, he's the guy, Donald Trump is the guy who said, I don't think he was born in America. I think he was born in Kenya, because Donald Trump is racist and has been his entire life. How about the absolute circus of hiring and firing people from his first term? Do you remember that? Do you remember how often, like the absolutely staggering amount of times Donald Trump got on a stage and was like, I gotta tell you guys, I just hired the most amazing person. You guys are not going to believe this. I'm not doing a very good Trump impression. I don't want to. Too many people are doing the impression and really trying to nail it and trying to impress you with how good their impression is. I don't fucking want to do a good impression of Donald Trump. I want it to be just like, make him sound like a jackass, even though like a good impression of him does make him sound like that. But I don't even want to do an accurate attempt at the voice. But do you remember how often he was like, I just got the best person to be a general. He's gonna blow all your minds. And then like a week later, he'd be like, yeah, so that guy sucked. I don't know who hired him. It wasn't me. Someone on my staff hired him, and we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna make sure we get to the bottom of this. And then like the next week, he'd be like, my new press secretary doesn't take any bullshit from anyone. My new press secretary is gonna be the most hardcore press secretary that's ever been. And like a week later, he's like, okay, yeah, she had to go. She wasn't good. She was bad at the job, and she was weak-minded. He's like, you know what? But my new attorney general, my new AG, he's a bulldog. This guy's a bulldog. All right, everybody's saying it. Everybody's telling me that we got the best AG. A week later, he's like, all right, so that guy was a coward and a rat. All right, he was a rat chicken piece of shit. And I don't think people actually remember just how many times that happened in a 4-year span. It was truly so many times. If I can find the accurate number of how many times it happened, I'll put it up on the screen for the video version, and you'll probably think like, there's no way it was that many times. There's no way it happened that many times in 4 years, but it did. What else? The staggering amount of former staffers who hate him. That's a thing. I remember during this last election, during the 2024 election cycle, talking to friends and family who I knew were going to vote for Donald Trump. And when I would ask them why are you voting for him? What's compelling you to do this? Among other lies, they would say things like, the economy, I just got to look out for my family. Groceries are out of control. Inflation's out of control. And obviously we've established that's bullshit. It was a bad faith framing. But another thing that they would say is they would just be like, I don't know. I just think he's of the two options, I think he's more qualified. Insane. insane to claim that he's more qualified than Kamala Harris to be the president of the United States. What an insane thing to claim. But then I would like just send them the articles of like how many former staffers had said in interviews, this man is not qualified for the office of president. Like people who worked directly with him who were like, I was there in the room with him. He's not qualified. One guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but he straight up called him a fucking idiot. He was like, I was in the Oval Office with him strategizing. When you spend time next to him, there's no question he's a fucking idiot. Like, he's not a smart man. And I would send these articles to friends and family and be like, so like, do you think you have a better grasp on his qualifications than the people who worked with him? And, you know, they would never actually be able to respond because, again, these people are not interested in engaging in the discourse in good faith, and we will get to what that means in a bit. Let's keep going down our list here. Calling his political opponents vermin, saying immigrants poison the blood of the country, you know, very Hitler-like there, something straight out of Mein Kampf, saying that there were very fine people on both sides of a neo-Nazi rally. This is something that Trump supporters love to claim is a lie. Every time we say it, like the very fine people on both sides thing, they're always like, he never said that. He never said that. And it's so easy to find the clip. It's so easy to just be like, here's the clip. In fact, I'm just going to play the clip right now.
What you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides. You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me.
Constantly dehumanizing queer people, writing executive orders in both of his terms that take direct aim at trans identity, overseeing the Supreme Court appointees who overturned Roe v. Wade, telling people to drink bleach at the start of the pandemic. This is another thing that people are like, you didn't say that. You're taking it out of context. It's like, he said it. He said it. Not only did he say maybe they could drink bleach, he also said maybe they could inject themselves with hydroxychloroquine. He said that. The sitting president at the start of one of the most deadly pandemics we've had in 100 years said that, instructed, you know, his cult followers to do that. Poisoning the well of good faith journalism with the whole fake news slogan and storyline, which again, he aped from Hitler. Hitler used to say, Lügenpresse, which meant lying press. And Trump just adjusted it to 21st century parlance and English to say fake news. It's just Hitler stuff, everybody. The overt misogyny in his dealing with female opponents, refusing to say Kamala's name. Didn't you love that whole thing in the campaign where he refused to say her name? Not only are like conservatives children in the way that they refuse to pronounce her name correctly, Donald Trump wouldn't say her name at all. He would just call her her. Like, so like during the debates, he'd be like, well, she said, and then he'd be like, yeah, well, that's because of her. She said, you know, and then she'd be like, well, you know, President Trump did this when he was president, yada, 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 addressing it. And that's why she came out on stage during their debate and she shook his hand and she said, Kamala Harris. And she introduced herself because A, they'd never met before, because another thing that's on my list is he did not attend the Biden inauguration. He did not participate in the peaceful transfer of power. He did not. I love that conservatives were like, Michelle Obama's not attending. She's not attending the Trump inauguration. Trump didn't attend. Trump was the sitting president at the Biden inauguration and he didn't go. Like he had never met Kamala Harris face to face. So at their debate, she had to be like, hi, Kamala Harris, nice to meet you. And he still was like, I'm not going to say her name. And he did the same thing with Hillary a lot. Sometimes he'd call her Crooked Hillary, but a lot of times when he was in the same room with her, he'd just be like, her, she, her, just overt, gross misogyny, overt, gross unprofessionalism for a person who's seeking the office that he's seeking. Having Nick Fuentes, an openly avowed Nazi, over to dinner at Mar-a-Lago, taking boxes upon boxes of classified documents to Mar-a-Lago and drastically jeopardizing national security in the process, letting Elon Musk, a full-blown Nazi, cheat him into a second term and then bragging openly about how Musk helped him cheat to win that election. And then, they've just been doing nonstop Nazi shit every day for the first several weeks of that term because, Nazis are going to do Nazi stuff. Having Tony Hinchcliffe perform during his campaign and calling Puerto Rico a garbage island, constantly encouraging police brutality against protesters at his rallies and during times of national upheaval, whether it was like protesters that were at his rallies and he's saying, man, I wish they'd take him out, just beat the hell out of those guys, or it was like a time of national upheaval and a national reckoning with, racial inequality and police brutality and police violence with the Black Lives Matter movement. As the president, he could never come out and just be like, these people have a legitimate grievance. He'd be like, man, I hope the cops are really brutal with them. I hope the cops really take him to task. Like, he's just such a piece of shit, right? He's just such a fucking gross piece of shit human being. Let's go over to the TikTok Digital Studio audience. We got a pretty solid list here. Obviously more than one thing, but what am I missing? What's not on the list so far? Tanya says the Trump Bible. Yeah, this is a good one. Oklahoma school starts requiring Bibles, and the Trump Bible is the only one that meets the criteria. That was crazy. Yeah, the constant grifting, just selling anything to his supporters, anything to his cult members whatsoever. $500 gold sneakers, that are the ugliest sneakers you've ever seen in your life. Let's see. Somebody else wrote Stormy Daniels, obviously. And Stormy Daniels, we can lump that into the 34 felony counts, like all the fraud, all of the lying, all of the people, the hush money that was paid and the people who weren't paid. And so I did mention that in my TikTok video. I think we can just include like all the felonies, all the crimes, and the 34 accounts are just the ones that we know about. DJ TP429 says Doge. Yeah, just what Doge is currently doing to the country and, the national budget, the Department of Government Efficiency. I think it's so insane. Like, I had an episode on the podcast recently called The Death of Satire, and we truly are in a post-satire world when Elon Musk can be a guy who gets to create a new government department and call it the Department of Government Efficiency because he thinks it's funny that the acronym is Doge, which is like an internet meme from 2013. And obviously Dogecoin is like a cryptocurrency, but people used to call millennials on the internet, on Reddit and stuff, in comments used to call dogs Doges. And they'd be like, ooh, Doge, I like the Doge. Look at the cute Doge. And this is literally like a very old internet meme. And Elon Musk is like, what if I called my department Doge? And it's like a reference to the coin, but it's also a reference to this really old joke that nobody tells anymore. And that's insane. I think that's enough things. We've listed a lot of things and we're getting off topic. But the point is, we've got more than one thing, right? I think we're done looking at this video too, this TikTok video of mine. But let's get into like bad faith framing, okay? So the entire framing that she wants to use here for this video is, boy, it really says something about the position of liberals and leftists and progressives, about the strength of their position, that they can only think of one thing. That they got nothing else. They zero in on this one thing. It really shows how little you guys actually have on him, that you've only got this one thing. And I just find it pretty much impossible to actually believe that this woman really thinks we only have one thing. I could say that this is a case of unconscious or subconscious bad faith framing, but I think this has to be a case of conscious bad faith framing. There's just no way this person who is obviously engaging publicly in sociopolitical discourse, she's got a little audience, she's got like a little, page where she posts regularly and posts bad takes regularly, but she's engaging, she's trying to engage in sociopolitical discourse. There's no way that in all that time, the only thing she's ever seen people who don't like Donald Trump say is, I'm mad about the price of groceries, because A, that's not even a thing we say. That's not even one of our things. And B, just all the things we just listed, right? So bad faith framing is when you just sort of lie. You intentionally frame the parameters of an argument in a dishonest way so that you can have an easier time advocating for your own position. And there are different examples of this. Like what she just did is an excellent example of bad faith framing. She knows that we have way, 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 way more than one thing that we're mad at Donald Trump about. Like she just has to. But she's willing to get on the internet and with her full chest lie and set up the parameters of the argument as though it's crazy that you guys don't like this guy when you can only think of one thing. You can only think of one thing, and it's even kind of weak. And then she actually, in the process, is willing to argue against herself retroactively. Because she's like, you got this one thing, and it's the groceries. But what you guys don't understand is groceries can't be fixed in one day. And it's like, yeah, you are retroactively in this moment arguing against yourself from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we were telling you that. 4 years ago, we were saying, no, the economy doesn't get fixed in one day by the president. And you were like, Biden, he's ruining the country. Look at the prices. So, the fact that there's no integrity. There's no integrity. There's no like commitment to any position. There's no faith in the position. The fact that the argument was, during the election, I'm voting for him because I want better groceries. And then she's willing to just completely throw that out the window and be like, I don't give a fuck about groceries once he's elected. And also that the argument during the Biden administration was like, look at these prices. And then when it's flipped around, she's like, you can't blame the president for the prices. There's no commitment to any of the positions because none of the positions are held sincerely. None of the positions are held in good faith. Some other examples of bad faith framing and bad faith tactics are disingenuously asking a question that you aren't looking for a genuine answer to, but pretending like you are. A great example is when conservatives will get into a comment section and say, what is a woman? Matt Walsh made a whole ass movie about this. Made a whole ass movie about pretending to go into progressive spaces and pretending to ask in good faith, what is a woman? Now, a good faith question is a person who's, I'm genuinely asking you a question and I'm genuinely interested in hearing your answer. What Matt Walsh was doing was making an entire video where he knew the conclusion of his movie before he even started making it. He knew, if you don't know this movie, don't ever watch it, but the conclusion of the movie, and it's the thing that all conservatives now parrot in comment sections everywhere, is a woman is an adult human female. That's Matt Walsh's answer to the question, what is a woman? It's the answer he already had before he started making his movie. And he went into all these spaces and then he disingenuously edits all of the people that he interviewed's answers to make them look weirder than they are, even though the answers, even with the bad editing, are still like, yeah, they're trying to answer your question. Like they're trying to, in good faith, answer your bad faith question. And they're actually doing like a pretty good job of it. They're talking about the fact that sex and gender are two different things. The fact that gender is a much more expansive concept than just this rigid binary. And so is sex. And that this is scientifically verifiable, that the overwhelming majority of biological scientists agree that sex as a human biological characteristic is not a binary, that it does not exist on a binary. There is nowhere that you can point to that supports the idea of a binary. You can't point to chromosomes. You can't point to hormones. You can't point to anatomy. In all of these cases, there are more than two orientations. And then gender is this whole other concept. It's this whole other societally constructed concept. It's like the performative actions one takes in society to perform the role that is typically assigned with certain sex characteristics. And you get into this whole like weird philosophical space of like, what is a chair? How do you describe what a chair is? A chair is something that fulfills the function of a chair, right? So if I have like a wooden box and I sit on it, is it a chair or is it a box? If I'm using it as a chair, does it become a chair for a second? Let's say I have a chair. It's got a back and four legs, and I use it as a step stool. I use it to get up high and change a light bulb. Is it now a step stool or a ladder? You could change the definition of what this thing is based on the function it is performing in my life. And that's, kind of the expansive explanation of what a woman is. But this is not something that you can cover in a comment section. So when someone asks you a bad faith question in a comment section, like, what is a woman? You can't actually get into the minutia and the nuance of answering that question in the comments with them, and they also don't care about your answer. All they're hoping you'll do is give them some overly complicated, overly wordy explanation like I just did, so that they can come back and be like, ha 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 ha, stupid lib, a woman is actually an adult human female. And that question was posed in bad faith because they never had an honest, sincere intention of actually listening to or considering your answer. So this is like essentially what bad faith framing is it's just straw manning, right? And this is another thing it's a thing you'll see in a lot of comment sections that I don't think people fully grasp what it is. Straw manning, like sometimes, I make these reverse shot videos where one of the characters is conservative and one of the characters is progressive, and the conservative character is always really dumb because conservatives are dumb, and the progressive character is always smarter because progressive people tend to be smarter than conservatives, and that's just factual. A lot of times people in my comments will go, nice straw man, and what they mean is I'm performing the conservative character less favorably than I'm performing the progressive character. My performance of the conservative character is like less nice than my performance of the progressive character. But the actual words in the text are not misrepresenting conservative positions. In fact, oftentimes, I write the scripts for those videos from word-for-word quotes from prominent conservatives. So I'll look on Twitter and I'll be like, what did Marjorie Taylor Greene say this week? What did J.D. Vance say this week? What did Ben Shapiro say this week? And I will take quotes word for word from them, and I will make the script for the conservative character out of those quotes word for word. Like, I have absolutely no desire to misrepresent my opposition's argument. I want to represent their argument as accurately as I possibly can, because I actually believe that demonstrates the strength of my position. When I go, I'm going to take your position and state it as clearly and as accurately as I possibly can, and then I'm going to show how easy it is to dismantle that position. But because my performance of it is sort of over the top and satirized and maybe a little bit like roasty, like I'm kind of making fun of them, they're like, this is a straw man. And it's like, that's not what a straw man is. A straw man is when I intentionally misrepresent the substance of your argument so that I can make my own position seem stronger. A few other forms of, bad faith framing and straw manning is disingenuously pretending to care about a topic that you don't actually care about, so that you can disingenuously try to make your position look stronger. Conservatives do this in a myriad of different ways. They'll do this when they say, oh wow, I can't believe that you're mutilating children, when they know that what's actually happening is that we're talking about supporting gender affirming care for trans kids because it's been scientifically proven to help them. It's been scientifically proven to reduce suicidality in trans kids. And so we're just trying to save lives. That's what we're actually trying to do. And conservatives will disingenuously pretend to care about the well-being and the safety of those kids when all of their positions are actually about dehumanizing those kids, robbing those kids of essential care that will help them be more mentally healthy and feel safe and feel seen and feel included. Like, everything that they do flies in the face of this feigned care for these kids. And also, it's a disingenuous framing, right? They're disingenuously framing the parameters of the conversation. They're saying, I'm anti-bodily mutilation for kids. You're pro-bodily mutilation for kids. And that's not actually the parameters of the conversation. It's, I'm pro-gender affirming care for trans kids, and you are anti-gender affirming care for trans kids. You want trans kids to suffer. That's the honest representation of the ideological disagreement that we're actually having. Because in reality, we're all kind of like pro bodily mutilation of kids. There's all kinds of contexts in which we're totally fine with doctors taking a scalpel and cutting into the flesh of little kids and, taking out pieces of bone and mutilating their bodies. We just don't call it that. We don't frame it in that way because there's no reason to frame it that way. There's no reason to be disingenuous about it. So like when a kid gets their wisdom teeth removed, a doctor he's cutting into their gums and he's opening up their gums and he's removing pieces pieces of enamel from their jawbones. And if you wanted, you could try to disingenuously make that seem really sinister and really mean and really evil. But what it actually is just sort of like a routine procedure that we're all okay with kids having. We're literally out here circumcising babies. We're doing genital mutilation on infants regularly because we're just like, I don't know, it's just kind of like tradition. I just don't want my kid to have a weird dick, you know? Like if all the other kids at the locker room in middle school have it one way and his is the other, I don't want him to feel weird. So like without their consent, we're all just doing that. So disingenuously pretending like you're on the anti-child mutilation team, you're not. And necessarily like neither are we, but mutilation's just a disingenuous word too, because we're talking about like cosmetic surgery and oftentimes gender affirming care for kids doesn't even involve surgery. Again, disingenuous framing. Like the actual reality of it is it's usually things like hormone blockers and just like therapy and being allowed to use their preferred pronouns and change their name and change the way that they dress and be recognized by their peers and their teachers, by their preferred identity and not even preferred, like their actual identity, I should say, pretending to care about the safety and well-being of children when we have receipts on how you respond, when actual children are blown to pieces, are actually mutilated by semi-automatic weapons, by AR-15s regularly in American schools. This is a thing that happens all the time in America. It's the leading cause of death for children in America. And when it happens, we go, that's bad. We're against that. And conservatives are like, it's just a necessary price for freedom. Necessary price for freedom. So like you can pretend you're against the bodily mutilation of children, but when kids' bodies are quite literally mutilated, when they are destroyed by gun violence, you go like, yeah, but guns, I like them though. I like those. So, it's just like, there's no area where conservatives can be honest about their positions. She pretends in this video to care about vets and homeless people when she's griping about the budget, and she's like, oh, we're giving all this money to immigrants, but we're not helping out vets and homeless people, as though like we can't just pull up the receipts on the conservative position as it regards unhoused people and veterans. Like, conservatives are not helping unhoused people and veterans with their policies and with their legislation. We have so many receipts of you guys being openly hostile to the unhoused population, openly hostile to vets who are seeking, mental health protection and safety when they get home from the wars that we make them fight. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's just straw manning. It's just bad faith. It's obfuscation. It's everything that's being done to just bolster one's own position. But none of it is done honestly. None of it is done sincerely. Like when she says, we're giving all this money to immigrants, but none to vets and homeless people, she knows she doesn't actually care about the vets and the unhoused. She knows she's pretending to care about them so that she can pretend her grievance with the money that goes to immigrants isn't just simply racist. Because by the way, even if she was telling the truth, even if she was sincere that she was like, when we give money to immigrants, it takes away money that we could be giving to the unhoused and veterans. That's even just a ridiculous position to have. It's an insane position to be like, I really want to help disenfranchised people who are down on their luck, people who need support, people who need mental health support. I really want to make sure there's a social safety net for them and that we're providing and allocating funds for them, but they have to be born in the right geographic location of the world. If they're not born in the same general geographic location in the world that I was, then fuck them. That's an insane thing. Like, what a weird dichotomous way to parse out your compassion and your empathy. To be like, oh, I definitely care about people who are falling on hard times. I definitely want to take care of people, but only people who were born roughly in the same geographic area of the globe that I was. Because why? Because you haven't actually thought about like what your compassion and what your empathy actually means, because your compassion and empathy is only reserved for your fellow Americans, even though we have receipts on receipts on receipts on receipts that you also do not have ample compassion or empathy for your fellow American citizens. I co-host a show called The Line sometimes on YouTube with my friend Forrest Valkai. And sometimes what we do is we have theists call in and they'll try to challenge us with questions about, trying to disprove our position as atheists. And they'll try to prove to us that God exists, or they'll try to, prove that creationism is real and that evolution is a lie. Or sometimes we'll just have people call in who disagree with us politically, and they'll try to argue political strategy with us, and stuff like that. It's really interesting. This show has been a show for a long time on YouTube. It's been a popular show for a long time. They have episodes every single week, and people are regularly calling into this show. And I've been a host on the show probably 5 or 6 times now. I'm probably going to start hosting the show more regularly this year. But it's a really interesting thing, because every time I sit down to do like a 5 or a 6 hour long stream on that show, I'm never worried that a conservative or a theist is going to call in and stump me with a question. I'm never worried about it. I'm never like, oh boy, I hope today's not the day that they decide to start engaging in good faith and they like ask me a question that I've never been asked before and I don't know how to answer it. And one question that we often ask theists and conservatives when they call in, it's very common for us to ask them this question. After going back and forth with them for a while, one of them will say that, we don't know how the evolution is a myth because of, we can't prove how abiogenesis works or something. And then Forrest, who's an evolutionary biologist, will explain to them how abiogenesis works and explain to them that we have actually observed abiogenesis, that we have actually observed in experiments the actual literal process of evolution happening in real time, and he'll explain to them how it all works. And we'll go back and forth for a while, and they'll dig their heels in, and they'll constantly kind of goalpost shift and deflect and pretend like their points have not been roundly refuted. And one question we'll often land on with them before hanging up on them is we'll say, is there anything either one of us could say that would change your mind? And you would be shocked how often these people with zero sense of irony or self-awareness say no. They say, no, there is nothing you could say that would change my mind on this, because it's just something I believe. And I care more about my faith than I do about demonstrable, objective truth. And so, and what's interesting, the difference between us is when I sit down in this chair to host that show, I'm not worried that they're going to stump me, but it's not because I have that same ideological rigidity. It's not that there's nothing a theist or a conservative could ever say that would change my mind about my positions. It's just that there's nothing they ever have said. It's just that in all the years that I've been doing this, they've never made even one compelling argument, and that's because they are only capable of exclusively arguing in bad faith. They're only capable of exclusively framing the parameters of their position in bad faith. And so I've never once had a theist or a conservative come to me with a good faith, well-reasoned, well-thought-out question or position that I had to sit and go, you know what? That's a new one, and I've never actually thought about that before. Let me sit with that, and I'll get back to you. I'm open to that happening. So I'm actually open to the fact that one of these days, someone could say something that makes me at least reconsider one of my positions. It's just that I don't think it will ever happen. I just don't think it's very likely, because I don't think these people at the end of the day fundamentally trust their own positions. And I think that the evidence for that is in the way that they are incapable of advocating for their own beliefs and their own positions in an honest way. It's just like, hey, as long as we're starting off and I can tell from the jump that you're framing your question in a disingenuous, bad faith way, I'm not worried. I'm just like, okay, well, right from the start, you're not arguing in good faith. So I already know what my automatic response is going to be on all of your points. And it's not going to be a difficult thing to kind of parse out. And I want to say something here, because we're probably about 2/3 of the way through this episode. And I think right now, there are probably a lot of people in my audience. There's probably a lot of people here on the TikTok Digital Studio audience. We got a little bit over 200 people here in the chat. And there's probably a lot of people watching on YouTube who are excited right now and going, man, I'm really glad that Austin is back on conservatives. I'm glad that he's back on, criticizing the far extreme right and the authoritarian and, bad faith rhetoric of the right, and he's off the backs of the protest voters. I'm really glad that he's not harping on that anymore. I'm really glad that he's back on the people that we all agree are bad. But I'm so sorry, I have to tell you, leftist protest voters do all of these exact same things. Everything that I just mentioned about conservatives, the bad faith framing, the asking disingenuous questions that you have no intention of actually caring about the answer to, the, pretending to care about something that you don't actually care about to bolster the strength of your own position, the constant goalpost moving, the constant deflection. Yeah. They do all of these things. And the reason why I keep harping on these people is because these people do watch my videos. They are actually, like the people that I'm hoping to coalition build with, and I see their tactics, and their tactics are indistinguishable from the tactics of the far right. And that bothers me and worries me and also makes me go, oh, okay, so you don't actually believe in or trust the strength of your own position. So really easy, really simple example here. And I know I've made a lot of videos about this lately, but just let me get through this one thing. And I promise we'll move on into the next section of the podcast. But when people say, well, we cared about the genocide in Gaza, it was a hard line for us. Why can't you understand that? Why can't you understand that we actually care about little kids getting killed and about hospitals being bombed? Sorry, that wasn't a hard line for you, but for some of us it was. This is a bad faith framing of our disagreement. And whether you know that or not, whether it's conscious or subconscious, does not matter. It's a distinction without a difference. You're still lying. And I do think on some level, you do know this. I do think that you do understand that we do not disagree on whether or not the genocide in Gaza is bad. We never have. We've always been on the same team on that. We do not disagree on whether or not little kids getting killed and hospitals being bombed is bad. We do not disagree on whether or not the United States government's complicity and participation in that is bad. We agree on all of those points. So right from the outset, whenever you choose to frame our disagreement this way, you are lying. You are not telling the truth. And what that betrays, whether you're aware of it or not, is that you don't trust your own position enough to be honest about it. Because the reality of our disagreement is that we disagree on strategy. We have the same position on all of those things, and we disagreed on what is the most effective way to advocate for those people, to advocate for the safety of the most marginalized and most vulnerable. Your rationale, protest voters, far leftists, militant leftists, ideologically rigid leftists, and protest voters, and abstention voters, people who decided to stay home and not vote in protest, your strategic rationale was the best way of advocating for the safety and well-being of the most marginalized and vulnerable communities, not only in America, but of the Palestinian people in Gaza, is to protest the duopoly that exists in the United States government, to protest the dual establishment powers by saying, I refuse to vote for either one of you, and I am going to symbolically, performatively demonstrate that I refuse to take part in this system that is hurting people. And you believed strategically that that was the best action to take. Our disagreement was, if we're being honest, if we're framing this in an honest way, that we believed that it was going to be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. It doesn't matter how much we both agree that the duopoly is a problem. It doesn't matter how much we both agree that the Electoral College is undemocratic and is problematic. It doesn't matter how much we both agree that maybe ranked choice voting would be better, or maybe it would be better to just get an actual progressive candidate for once. None of that matters. What matters is the actual viable choices are what they are. And if we actually want to advocate for the most marginalized and vulnerable communities in an actual way that has the chance of actually working and doing something and putting things into action, we have to vote for one of these two options. And our calculation was that Harris is the clear choice over Trump. And that's our disagreement. And I really think that the evidence has borne out that we were correct on pretty much every single one of the points that we disagreed on. We were correct that it was going to be one of those two options. A lot of people were like, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. We can change it. And we were like, well, we're not going to. Before November, we're just not going. There's not enough momentum behind this movement. People were like, if we get to 5% though, if we just get to 5%, we can change it. We can get it on the ballot for next time. Didn't get to 5%. didn't get to 5%. You didn't get it. You didn't get to 5%. We told you. We were like, it's not going to happen. We even said it's happened before that third-party candidates and Green candidates have gotten over 5%. It still didn't topple the duopoly. We told you all of this, and we were correct about this. Like, at the end of the day, it was Harris and Trump. And we told you that the situations that you cared most about, let's be honest, the situation, the one singular situation, would be made worse with a second Trump administration. I believe the data is very clearly bearing out that we were correct about that. That we were correct to tell you that the one situation you actually care about will be made worse. And so there's all this bad faith framing, because even when you say, I can't sign my name to that, I just care so much about these people, your actions tell a different story. And again, whether you're aware of that consciously or unconsciously, it doesn't really matter, because what your direct actions actually did is made the only vulnerable and marginalized group you actually care about significantly less safe. And in the process, you were willing to throw trans people, disabled people, immigrant families, people of color, indigenous people, all in America. You were willing to throw all of them under the bus to make your performative statement that didn't actually wind up doing anything. So I actually think that, like, when we're having the argument in good faith, when we're actually setting the parameters of the argument in good faith, I think that the data bears out that we were correct. And, I want to now get into the last portion of the show, which is the, reflexive defensiveness, because I start to think, like, why is it that even when we all agree on so much, that the people in my audience who watch my videos and consume my content and most of the time are like, man, I'm with this guy so much of the time, so much of what he says seems so reasonable. Why is it that on certain things they just become as every bit as ideologically rigid and every bit as bad faith and every bit as disingenuous as far-right extremists? Like, what changes? What happens? What's the alchemy that changes them from open-minded, compassionate, forward-thinking, progressive people to ideologically rigid, unmovable, stubborn, staunch, like, bad faith arguers? What happens? And I think that there's this weird, funny switch that gets flipped when the spotlight of criticism switches from your ideological opponents to you. I think that everybody loves it when I'm going after the red hats, right? When I'm taking the red hats down, you guys, you're like, you can be as mean as you want, Austin. Get louder, get meaner, go harder, do it more. You love it. You love it when I tear through their filth and when I eat, when I just eat them up. Yum, 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 yum. But anytime you feel the gaze of my critical spotlight touch your skin, there's this reflexive defensiveness that comes out. And it's really, really interesting. It's really odd, like, psychologically, if you actually think about it, to be a person who's following a content creator and be like, dude, this guy never misses. Every single thing this guy says is fire. Every single take he has is bars. This guy, all of his arguments are so well worded, they're so well reasoned, so well thought out, and the second one of my arguments is about something that you do, you're like, you know what? Actually, fuck that guy. Actually, I think I hate him. Actually, you know what? Like, I actually think he's, like, really stupid, actually. I think he's, like, really bad at thinking and arguing and wrong about things. I don't know what happened to him. He fell off, And then all of a sudden you go into, like, all this disingenuous stuff like tone policing. You're like, hey, if you want a coalition build with us, don't be so mean to us, maybe. Don't yell at us. It's like, oh, but you were cool with me yelling at them? And it's like, well, I mean, just tone it down a little bit. And it's like, if I'm nicer, then you'll listen to me. And it's like, well, I don't know, maybe. It's just so funny to be, like, all in on somebody, and the second that they talk about you, be like, wait a minute. No. Actually, I don't like that part. I don't like that one. We're going to go through another video to talk about what I'm talking about, here. And I'm going to give the leftists and the protest voters a break. I'm going to give you guys a break. And I'm just going to talk about just, like, everyday, left-leaning, progressive, white people who think of themselves as really open-minded and who think of themselves as, like, really tolerant and who think of themselves as allies, who every once in a while in my content, something I say will make them self-reflective and be like, oh wait, that's about me. And it's interesting how quickly the the reflexive defensiveness comes out. So let's check this video out that I made today. Hello, friends. This is a white person in my audience who has dreadlocks who seems to be asking sincerely why he should not have dreadlocks. Now, I do believe that there are a lot of people who are far more qualified to speak on this than I am, but I do not want any of those people to have to do this labor for him, especially not during Black History Month, so I'm going to try to break it down as best I can. The reason why I told the white woman with dreads in the video that you're commenting on that she has a whole ass minstrel show on her head is because she kind of does. White people's hair does not naturally form into dreads anywhere near as easily as black people's natural hair does. You can see that the roots of her hair are a lot like mine. They're very fine and straight, which means it takes a lot more effort for her to form her hair into dreads than it does for a black person to do that. It's kind of like Rachel Dolezal getting a really tight perm to try to mimic the natural curls of a black woman's hair. And this is honestly not that different from doing blackface. If I wanted to make the tone of my skin darker, there's only so much sun tanning I could do to accomplish that naturally. I only have so much melanin in my skin. At some point, I would have to use makeup to artificially darken my skin if I wanted to achieve certain tones. Now at this point you might be thinking, come on, this feels like a reach. Minstrelsy is an insulting clown act. Some people just see natural hairstyles like cornrows or dreadlocks and just want to wear them for themselves because they think they're beautiful. What's wrong with that? And in the abstract, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with seeing a person's hair and saying, that's beautiful. I wish I had hair like that. But if you add historical context, the problem becomes pretty clear pretty quickly. Historically, black people have been punished and dehumanized for wearing their hair naturally. They've been told that their hair is unprofessional in the workplace, or thuggish, or inappropriate. They have been racially profiled by the police for simply existing on the street with a natural hairstyle. So when white people who are part of a racial demographic that does not historically experience discrimination for the way that their hair naturally grows out of their head decide to appropriate black hairstyles because it just looks nice or seems fun, it's not dissimilar from minstrelsy, which is essentially just white people getting on stage and saying, I know that we're part of a society, an institution of power that regularly dehumanizes these people for the amount of melanin they have in their skin, but wouldn't it be fun if I pretended to have that much melanin in my skin just as like a goof, as like a funny show? Because we're not going to have any consequences for it. Nobody's going to dehumanize or punish me for painting my face a certain color. I can just do it for fun and then take it off later if I don't want it anymore. But black people can't just change the way that their hair naturally grows or change the amount of melanin they naturally have in their skin, nor should they be expected to. I get it. You wanted dreadlocks because you think they look cool, and you're right, they are cool. But there's historical context here that makes what you're doing a little disrespectful, and I think that you should consider that. Thanks. So on the note of tone policing, right? We've talked a little bit about tone policing, how people will be like, just say it nicer. How come you got to be so mean? And look, I can own the fact that I can be a feisty little diva. I can be a feisty little queen sometimes on the internet, and I think sometimes you guys like that. Sometimes you like when I'm being a little mean, angry, feisty dog, but also when I'm trying to call people on my own ideological team. This was a guy in my audience who was like, hey, I'm a socialist and I vote Democrat and I'm a leftist, but I have dreadlocks. What's wrong with that? And did you hear my tone? Could I have been more respectful in that video where I was really just soft and just being like, listen, I'm going to do my best to try to explain it. I don't want a black person to have to do the emotional labor of explaining this to you, especially not during Black History Month. So let me do my best to explain it to you. And it's so interesting. This phenomenon of reflexive defensiveness immediately started showing up in my comments section. Now, there were a lot of black people in my audience who were like, thank you so much. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for understanding that. Thank you for explaining it for us. But then there were a lot of white people in my audience, people who follow me. Again, people who like 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 are like, Austin never misses. He's the best. But when I said something that they weren't ready to be self-reflective of, this immediate defensiveness comes out. And my comments were just full of this. I mean, this person, Aurora Rose, says, normalize letting people wear whatever hair they want. Feel however you feel about it, and a lot of your feelings are valid, but people can do what they want with their own hair, including my baby. So yeah, this is just a person who, like, I guess their child, their baby, or like their boyfriend or something has, is like a white person with an appropriated hairstyle. And they're just like, hey, you might have, legitimate feelings about it, but normalize letting people do whatever they want. And I don't know, I got a lot of comments like this, and I would just sort of ask this person, would you say the same thing if it were actually blackface? If your like boyfriend just really liked doing blackface, and I explained to your boyfriend why he shouldn't do blackface, would you be like, it's not your face, it's not your skin, normalize letting people do whatever they want. It's not hurting, you might, look, you might have some valid feelings about it, but he's not hurting anybody. He just thinks that like more melanated skin is pretty, and he wants his skin to look like that. Just let him do what he wants. We might live in a world at one point. We might get there at some future point where black people are not discriminated for the natural amount of melanin in their skin or for the natural way that their hair grows. We're not there yet. So as long as black people are actively being discriminated against for their hairstyles, just like understand that you're being called in to be aware of that and respectful of that. And it's okay. Like, you don't need to have that hairstyle. This guy, Jerry Garcia, was all over my comments. He said, I don't care how anyone wears their hair. If we want to continue with progress, no one should have any say on how people style their hair. Jerry Garcia was all over my comments being like, this is why people don't like liberals. This is why we lose elections. And again, Jerry, I would just say, would you make the same argument about actual blackface? Would you? Just be honest. Would you? You're just getting like defensive because I'm poking at something that you're not ready to fully understand or to fully grasp or to fully sit with. But you're like, this is insane. This is why people don't like us. Or Jerry, or you just need to sit with it for a second longer. Or you can just admit that like there's just some things that white people don't need to do. Would you say this about like the usage of the N-word? Would you just be like, it's a word. Everyone should be allowed to use it. Or are you okay with respectfully abstaining from that? And do you understand why you should be okay with respectfully abstaining from that? And why are you making the distinction between blackface and the N-word and a hairstyle? What's the separation there, Jerry? Lace said, I'm not doing it, but it's super odd to pretend that locks belong to a single race and ignore the many cultures that have it embedded in their history. So this is a person who's like trying to contend with the fact that I said when you add historical context, it changes it. Yeah, maybe you could point to different cultures that have had different hairstyles traditionally in their culture. What we're talking about is the American institutions of power and the way that the American systems and institutions of power have historically marginalized and dehumanized specifically the black population for the way that their hair naturally grows and for the amount of melanin that they naturally have in their skin. That's what we're talking about here. And when people who are members of that culture, the culture in society that has weaponized its systems of power against these people for the way that their hair looks, then appropriate that hair and just be like, I like it, I'm going to do it. And they know that they themselves are not going to experience that same systemic discrimination and oppression for having that hairstyle. That's a problem. Again, these are people that I am ideologically aligned with for the most part, who are just having a hard time coming in because the spotlight of my critical eye has touched them and it's made them feel some type of way. This is why we keep losing elections. Stop policing what people say and do with their own bodies. People can have any hairstyle they want. You people are insufferable. Again, same rejoinder, right? Just like blackface, N-word, all that stuff, using ableist slurs against disabled people and stuff like that. Like, you understand the concept of having boundaries in society that are respectful of marginalized communities, right? Like you understand the concept of like abstaining from certain language out of respect for the historicity of how those words and language have been weaponized against people. Like you understand that concept, right? It's the exact same concept here, I promise. Aurora Rose, again, says, I'm genuinely curious, wouldn't accepting other people's use of various hairstyles help normalize the style and help alleviate or prevent discrimination? Well, it hasn't so far, Aurora. White people have been appropriating these hairstyles for many decades now, and it hasn't really changed anything yet. Black people are still experiencing systemic discrimination for their natural hair and for having more melanin in their skin. So I don't know, like this hypothetical that you're posting, we've been living in the world where people have been trying to normalize these various hairstyles and it hasn't worked yet. I would say maybe just wait until Black people are no longer being systemically discriminated for those hairstyles before you start to approach the conversation of like, do you think it's cool if I have locks in my hair now too? So what would it look like to take a good faith correction, someone calling you in and offering you a correction? What might it look like to say, you know what? I didn't know that. Thank you for the new information. I will adjust my thinking going forward. Well, boy, do I have an example for you, and I bet people in the comments have already been saying it in the TikTok Digital Studio audience. I haven't been watching, but I bet people have already been saying it. A lot of people in that video that I just showed pointed out that I actually made a linguistic mistake several times in the video. I kept referring to the hairstyle as dreadlocks. And a lot of people pointed out in the comments to me, actually, the nomenclature we prefer is locks. Dreadlocks is a term that was used to kind of try to make the hairstyle seem more inappropriate or, thuggish or unprofessional than it actually is. So we prefer to just call them locks. When Black people have locks in their hair, they're just called locks, not dreadlocks. And I could have fallen into a spell of reflexive defensiveness here. I very easily could have been like, hey, I'm trying to advocate for you here. I'm trying to be a good guy. And you're going to come into my comments and correct me? You're going to come in and correct me on something that's like really pedantic and small? But it's not pedantic. It matters. And what I had to do is quiet my ego and go, oh, that's actually good information. And I had to kind of like take the hit because it is kind of embarrassing to post a video where I'm trying to help and where I'm trying to be educational and to make a huge error in that video where I demonstrate that like I don't actually know as much about the topic as I probably should to be talking about it. Now, I did say that at the beginning of the video. I did say this. Now, I do believe that there are a lot of people who are far more qualified to speak on this than I am, but I do not want any of those people to have to do this labor for him, especially not during Black History Month. So I'm going to try to break it down as best I can. So I did kind of qualify it in the video, but it's still embarrassing. It's still embarrassing to be called out and be like, oh, shit, I've got 1.5 million people in my audience and I just posted a video where I was trying to like educate someone on something and I actually made this huge error and that's really embarrassing. But what I did over and over and over again in those comments is I said, thank you for the correction. I just learned that today and I will be adopting it in my language going forward. So going forward, I will not make that linguistic error. And that's all it is, y'all. That's all it takes. That's all it takes is just like sit with the correction, understand that it's okay to be wrong about something, and just say, my bad, I'll try to do better going forward. And I'm not trying to be on my high horse about this because I'm not perfect at this. I'm far from perfect at this. I am just as prone to bouts of reflexive defensiveness as anybody else. I regularly am not good at taking good faith corrections when I make mistakes. I regularly find myself doubling down and digging my heels in on things that I probably shouldn't be doubling down and digging my heels in on. And then I find myself in a situation where I'm like, damn it, I got myself like 3 videos deep on this and I should have just let it go. That's happened before. That happens in real life sometimes. I'll just get stuck on an issue and I'll know that I'm losing an argument. And what happens when we know that before we're ready to just accept it and concede is we start to reflexively resort to all of these bad faith tactics that I talked about in the first half of the show. When we start to feel that reflexive defensiveness, when we start to be like, no, you're talking about me now, when we start to become reactionary and we're not listening, that's when all of those bad faith tactics can start to enter our arsenal of argumentative rhetorical weaponry. Again, that's why I say it might be subconscious, because we might not be conscious of the fact that it's happening. It might just be that, like, subconsciously we are embarrassed and we don't like the feeling of being embarrassed and we're not ready to just own our mistake. And the only way out of that situation that feels like saving face is to start lying and to start just making arguments that we don't actually have any confidence in, and to start just sort of deflecting and goalpost shifting and doing all kinds of bad faith framing to try to obfuscate and, confuse the person you're arguing with, and start topic dumping. And I've done all of this. Like, I'm human. I fall in prey to all of this. And so I guess what I'm saying with this episode is, like, as progressive, forward-thinking people who like to think of ourselves as allies and who like to think of ourselves as more enlightened than our ideological opposition, let's try to do better, When we're talking to each other about things that we're getting wrong in our nomenclature, in our language, in our linguistics, in our rhetorical argumentative strategy or style, let's try to be better about listening and actually sitting with corrections, actually weighing it and going, is there validity to that? Is there validity to that correction? And could I have made a mistake? Before just being reactionaries and being, instinctively defensive. Okay, that's my piece. Let's go over here and talk to the TikTok digital studio audience, who have been so lovely and so patient and having such a lively, bright discussion over here. For a more complete version of this episode, a complete version where I read more of the comments from that video, and a complete version where I have more of the talkback with the TikTok digital studio audience, you can check out the full, complete, longer bonus edition of the podcast on Patreon. Patreon.com/Austin Archer for the unedited full bonus edition. There will be lots of bonus footage there if that's your thing. If you're just watching this and you're like, I just need as much of it as I can get, www.patreon.com/Austin Archer. Join my amazing patrons over there who are the coolest people in the world. I love them so much. Okay, what does the TikTok digital studio audience have to say about all of this? So Brandon says, not getting defensive is a learned skill. Don't beat yourself up for not being good at it yet. I'll go back and forth with people sometimes, and I'll be really harsh with them, because we'll go through this cycle that I've been through so many different times with different people in my comments, where, like, they'll say something that I think is demonstrably untrue. I'll refute the thing that they said in good faith, and I'll show point by point, show why what they said is demonstrably untrue. And then instead of owning it, they'll double down. And the double down frustrates me, because I'm like, you're just repeating what I already refuted. And I repeat my refutation. And then they start goalpost shifting and obfuscating. And then I get mad, because I'm like, okay, well, now you're wasting my time and you're not engaging in good faith. And I get mad and I start to get mean. And when I get mean, ooh boy, like, I can get really, really, really mean. And then the person will start feeling justified in being like, well, now I don't need to listen to him because he's mean. Now that he's mean, now that I made him get really mean, I don't need to listen to him. And they'll start doing a lot of disingenuous things like tone policing and saying, like, dude, you need to chill. You need to calm down, and we can go back and forth for like a while. Like, I can get into it with people and go back and forth and keep pressing them on the fact that, like, they know that they're wrong. And in the rare instance that person apologizes and winds up saying, you know what, I was wrong, I will always immediately drop my gloves and go, thank you so much for saying that. That I really appreciate that. I really respect you for saying that. Honestly, like, I can be going back and forth, like, saying the meanest, most vitriolic shit ever. And the second someone takes an ounce of accountability and goes, you know what? I actually think that I might be in the wrong here. I think I got caught up in the motion of the debate and I just sort of lost myself. I will immediately drop it and go, thank you so much for doing that. And tell them, like, do you know how rare it is for someone to own their mistakes like that and take accountability? It's like seeing fucking Bigfoot. Thank you for doing it. Jillian Marie Art says, you cannot appreciate parts of Black culture while widely accepting Black people are being oppressed. I think you mean while not widely accepting Black people are being, like, you cannot appreciate. Yeah, I think that what you mean is, like, in order to appreciate aspects of Black culture, you're talking about the whole locks thing, the hairstyles conversation. You need to also actively, if you're appreciating how beautiful Black hairstyles are and going, oh, I love that so much, you need to respect the institutional and societal history of oppression and discrimination that comes with that. This whole conversation reminds me a lot of a video I made a while ago called it was about gender reveal parties, and it was like, can we please stop doing gender reveal parties? And it was all about how weirdly gender reveal parties have become this thing in the 21st century, and how like weirdly they have this tendency to devolve into violence. Like people keep dying at gender reveal parties, and like there's always like explosions involved, and people are like making pipe bombs and stuff at their gender reveal parties. And so I made this series of TikTok videos where I was like, hey, can we stop doing these? Like, can we stop killing people at gender reveal parties? But the bigger point I wanted to make was also gender reveal parties are weird because you cannot reveal the gender of a person you've never met. That's a weird thing to try to do. And all of these people, all of these progressive people, ally people, queer people in my comments were like, I had a gender reveal party for my baby. Screw you, Austin. Like, they got really mad. They were like, how dare you? How dare you criticize my gender reveal party? I had a good time at my gender reveal party. Nobody died at my gender reveal party. I didn't kill anybody. We just had cupcakes. We had pink cupcakes. And I was like, I like the people dying part of the gender reveal party isn't even my main point. That is kind of weird that like so many people keep dying at gender reveal parties. But my main point is like, you can't have a party about a child's gender who you've never met. That doesn't make any sense, especially as a forward-thinking progressive person who understands that gender is a social construct and that gender is like a deeply personal aspect of a person's identity that they are going to have to discover and identify for themselves. It's really weird while a baby is in utero to insist that it is a girl or a boy based on what anatomy was visible on the sonogram. You don't even know if that child is intersex. Like, you don't know what their internal anatomy looks like. There could be an external, penis and an internal uterus, and you would not know that. And you're having a gender reveal party, and you're doing two things that like progressive people shouldn't be doing. You're equating sex and gender, and you're also like forcing societal traditional gender norms and the idea of the gender hierarchy and the gender binary onto your unborn child. And I was like, don't do that. And all these people in my audience who had gender reveal parties were like, I don't like that you're making me feel bad about the party that I had for my baby. It was fun. My family came over and we had a good time. I don't like that you're making me feel bad about it. And it's like, look, it's totally okay to celebrate the fact that you're having a baby. Obviously, you're excited about the fact that you're having a baby. That's cool. Congratulations. I'm just saying, don't be weird about it. Don't have a weird party that doesn't make any sense about it. Have like we're having a baby party. I made the point in that video, like, it's like having like a sexuality reveal party where you're like, it's a straight baby. And it's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You couldn't possibly know that. You haven't met that baby. You don't know if they're straight or bi or pan. What are you talking about? And to make the point really clear for people who struggle with this concept, if someone asked you, if you were pregnant and someone said like, because people ask like, is it a boy or a girl? Are you having a boy or a girl? What are you having? What are you having? And they want to know, which part of the rigid fixed binary of gender your unborn child aligns with. And obviously you couldn't possibly know that. But how would you feel if someone came up to you and you were pregnant and they said, is your baby cisgender or trans? Your reaction would be like, what? What a weird, what an inappropriate question to ask me. What a weird question to ask me. How could I possibly know that? Well, by saying boy or girl, you are insisting upon cisgender. Usually what's happened is your OB has shown you a picture of the baby and said, this baby got a little vagina in there. There's a little vagina on this unborn baby. And you go, that means girl, which means you're saying my child who is not born is cisgender. My child will be assigned female at birth because of the vagina, and that means that my child is cisgender because I'm saying girl. And so it's a weird concept when you really sit with it and think about it. That like, if somebody was like, hey, is your unborn child going to be cis or trans? You'd be like, I don't fucking know. Because you don't. A really fun thing about that too is the woman who invented gender reveal parties has done multiple think pieces on how she regrets it. She's done multiple articles about being like, I wish I'd never done that because I don't think people should be doing those. DJ BJ asks, why do you think we're not hearing more Back the Blue uproar over the January 6th pardons? Well, that goes all the way back to the beginning of the episode where we talked about the bad faith framing device of pretending to care about something you don't actually care about. So when conservative people pretend to care about cops and they say back the blue and blue lives matter, did you know that they don't actually give a shit about cops? They don't actually care about cops. They don't actually care about troops. They don't actually care about any of that shit. So let's think about it. Let's think about it critically. If they don't actually care about the cops, what do they care about? If it's not about the cops, if it's not actually about Blue Lives Matter, it's not actually about All Lives Matter, it's not actually about backing the blue, what could it be about? What are the cops often doing? Who are the cops often standing in opposition to when they're saying back the blue? Who are the cops brutalizing that people are then protesting against the cops for brutalizing those people? What is going on there? It's racism. It's that the cops are brutalizing communities of color, and we're saying Black Lives Matter, and in response they're saying, no, we're cheering for the cops who are hurting the black people. That's all. That's what it is. They don't actually give a shit about the cops. It's a bad faith framing of what they actually care about. What they care about is that the cops act as the enforcers of the state to enact the societal oppression and discrimination and, racial dehumanization of black people. That's what they care about. They want the police to continue being that violent arm of the state to enact their personal prejudices, but they can't actually say that. They can't just, own that with their chest. So they go, well, I just really care about cops. And then when an issue comes up that's like, now's your chance to prove that you care about cops, January 6 rioters were tasing cops in the neck and beating cops with American flag poles and breaking cops' arms indoors and making cops die by suicide because they were so violent with them. How much do you care about cops now? They don't give a shit about cops. And it's like, yeah, you never did. You never did. It was always about what the cops do to the people you don't like, to the people you actually don't like. That's what it was always about. They don't like Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse isn't like a charismatic, cool guy. Nobody wants to go to an event and listen to Kyle Rittenhouse speak. They like that Kyle Rittenhouse got famous for killing the people they don't like. That's it. That's all it is. Shells Bell says, but police forces started out as, yes, you are correct, they started out as an arm of the state that enforced slavery. They went and caught runaway slaves, and then when the Emancipation Proclamation happened, the police started doing legal slavery through the 13th Amendment by coming up with trumped-up charges like loitering and stuff like that. The police always have been an institution of brutally enforced racism. Like, that is what the police have foundationally always existed to do. And that's actually my armchair theory is that's why so many Capitol Police officers died by suicide, because in general, police officers tend to align with conservatives politically. So this was a situation where these people who had been sort of sold the lie that like, hey, we're all Blue Lives Matter and we got the thin blue line flag on our car and we're back the blue. They thought these people were their teammates. They thought that these people were on their team. And I think it was psychologically and emotionally and spiritually devastating for them to find out that they actually didn't mean anything to these people, that these people actually didn't care about them at all, that these people were just using them as a tool, and once they weren't useful, they could throw them away. And so, why are they the way that they are? I don't know. I don't know. I think that when it comes to us, like when it comes to why do we sometimes act in bad faith and use bad faith tactics, I think it's because we sometimes get a little bit defensive and, reactionary, and we need to watch that. But these people are all reactionary. They don't have anything worth fighting for. before, and I don't know what that's like. You know, like I said, when I go on that show, The Line, and I sit down, I'm so confident in the substance of my own positions. I'm so confident that I don't need to misrepresent my opposition's position. I don't need to misrepresent my position in any way. I don't need to pretend to care about things that I don't actually care about to make my argument. I don't need to pretend that my opposition thinks things that I know they don't really think to make my argument. I'm so confident that I can just state my case and be as honest as possible, and it will make my case even stronger. And I don't know what it's like to go through life pretending to believe a bunch of shit I don't actually believe, and I don't know why people do that, but they do, and that's weird. And I think that is the end of our show. Okay. People Pleaser is written, edited, hosted, and produced by me, Austin Archer, with original theme music also by me. You can get more of my music by going to austin-archer.com, austinarchermusic.bandcamp.com, or by looking it up on Spotify or Apple Music, whatever. I got music videos on YouTube if you want to watch those, patreon.com/austinarcher if you want to support this show. Shout out to the Patreon patrons. Check out the Wonder Podcast. That's my new podcast that I do with my best friend Kramer England, and it's not like this at all. It's just us talking about movies. We're just going and seeing movies and then sitting down and going, let's talk about this movie. And it's fun and it's chill and it's funny and it's exciting and entertaining, and you should check it out. We're a new show. We're growing. It'll be linked in the description of this video. Go check us out. And I think that's everything. Okay? I'll see you at the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Thank you so much. Love you so much. Bye-bye.